Okay, I didn't see the little, there we go.
Oh, so you guys can see it when I hit record? Oh,
Yeah,
good.
it says recording up in the corner.
Thank you, Holly, for helping me do my job. Okay, so Word document, this is what I'm thinking I would like to see the annotated bibliography is formatted like. And the reason for this is because I have to read so many. It's nice if they're all uniform as opposed to like all these different ways that make it a little bit difficult for me to flow through 15 10-page documents quickly. So remember, first we start with the citation. Research is great, and it needs to be in APA format. So if you don't remember APA format, I would suggest that maybe you get an APA manual and, you know, look that up. But I will go through this really quick. Okay, so author name first, last name, comma, initials, period. If you've got multiples, it would be first initial, unless you see like a second initial provided on the article, you can include that. So if you see something like that. If it's 2 authors, something like that. If it's 3 authors, something like that. If it, I believe, is 6 or more, I need a 5th person. Look at you, your first publication, woohoo! If it's, I believe it's 6 or more, it might be 5 or more, you gotta check the manual on that one. You just put the first 5 authors and then leave it with et al., which is actually a word, et al. AL is an abbreviated word, but the ET is an actual word, and it just means and others. So in APA format, if you've got like 10 million authors on something, you don't list them all. If it's over 5, you just list the first 5 and or 6, and then et al. On the rest of it. Even in the reference list, if it's 6 or more, you don't list it all. And then in text, you don't list it all. Nope. If it's the only instance where you don't list them all is if it's more than 6. If it's like 3 authors, 4 authors, or 5 authors, the very first time you list them all, and then every time after that you do the first and then et al. In text. But with 6 or more authors, 5 or 6, dang it, I can't look it up. Somebody look it up in APA format. If it's 5 or more or 6 or more, it would always just be those first 5 and then the et al. In text and in the reference page.
Here where you did that, would that be because there are 6 there? Oh, well,
I can't remember if it's 5 or 6. 6 or more. Okay, so you list the first 5, and number 6 is not listed. If you have 10, you list the first 5, and all the other 5 aren't listed. 6 or more. Well, no, wait. Okay, so if it's 6 or more authors.
When you put 6.
Yeah. Does it say you list the first 6?
Let me read more into it.
It's in the APA manual, which of course is locked in my office with my keys. By the way, guys, because I left my adapter in my office, we're not hooked up to this internal mic system. So it's all coming through my laptop right now. So make sure you speak loudly in class so that our online crew can hear.
It says 3, 4, 5. You list them all.
6.
6 or more. List at all.
Okay, 6 or more, then you list at all, which means you'll have authors 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then anything beyond number 5 is just et al. Okay, it is, but you know, if you read it. Okay, so in this case, we would have, sorry, Molly, you got bumped. All that work, and you're not even going to be listed. Okay, so list your authors out, then your year, followed by a period. There's a period after everything in APA format. And then you put your title, and your title is in sentence case, not title case. Anybody know the difference?
Yeah. capitalize all
Exactly. So title case would be like this. Research is great. I mean, you wouldn't capitalize is because it's not a important word, but this is not the correct way to do it. You want to do it like this, followed by whatever punctuation it is. If there's like a colon in between, research is great, colon, how to make RT better, then it's that first word after the punctuation, the colon or the semicolon or whatever is capitalized, and then the rest of it is not. RT is capitalized because that's a proper noun. Man, English rearing its ugly head here. High school English, whatever that is capitalized. All right, then our journal name, which needs to be italicized. The journal volume, which also is italicized. The issue goes in parentheses. It is not italicized. And if we want to get really nitpicky, which we do, the parentheses are not italicized either. And you'll notice there's no space in between the volume and issue number. There are people called copy editors who all they do is nitpick this stuff. And there are people like me who were forced to do it, and so I will nitpick it as well.
Number 2.
Or number 2 is your professor who will nitpick it.
Or reviewer 2.
Oh, reviewer number 2 for sure.
They're equal.
Okay, so comma after your journal name, comma after the issue number, but not in between volume and issue. And then page numbers. So you want to do the first page number and the last page number all the way through. Don't just list the first page of the first of the article. None of that is italicized, and then followed all by a period. If you have articles that are newer, they may have a DOI, digital object identifier. I feel like I'm having a flashback talking about this right now. Did we talk about this?
Yeah, I asked about it, I think, the last class or something like that.
Okay.
So we were talked about it.
Yeah, DOI, it's a big number. Usually it starts with 10, blah, 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 and it would look just like that, and then period. Okay, and you can cut and paste that off of articles and like databases and stuff like that. So also, you need to have a hanging indent, which means the 2 bottom lines, or the second, or if it's only the second line, need to be indented, but not the first line, which is weird because usually when we write our paragraphs, the first line is indented. Okay, so this is a correct, and then I would like it bolded, which we don't normally bold references, but in an annotated bibliography, I would like it bolded, and then just start down on your next line and you can start writing all about it. Okay, and then keep them 1 page per article. So get down to the bottom of this page. Oh, sorry, that was probably loud. And then page 2 would be article number 2. And do it all over again. Look, Molly, you're back.
So we don't need to put a title on there then,
A title on what?
on your annotated bibliography. We could take the title off.
Like your title is annotated bibliography?
Because I've been putting a title up above and then putting in the reference. So just go ahead and take the title off.
The title of what? Sorry.
The title of the journal.
That's right here.
Right. So I don't need to do that because
Nope.
it's just random. I mean, it's just redundant.
Yeah, redundant, extra stuff.
Okay, I'll take it off.
Just start each page with the citation, go right into the information that needs to go in that summary of it, and then page 2 is into citation number 2.
So you said that each segment needs a period after it. Is that after the title too? And I know that one had an exclamation point, and I don't know if that would even change it. But if it does have punctuation at the end, do you do punctuation and the period? Okay.
You just do whatever the punctuation is.
Okay.
Like if it's something like, then that would be what it was.
Okay. Okay.
If you're looking at the journal article itself and the title is up across the top and there's no punctuation on that, you end it in the reference with a period.
in following APA format, do you want a title page that just literally is like annotated, but just to have a title page, just to practice it?
In this one, no.
We don't need to worry about it? Okay.
Not in this. If we were doing a more formal lit review with the master's students, I would say yes. So Heather and the other doctoral students online, yes, you guys need to have a title page, like a formal title page.
Okay, but we don't need to worry about it.
If you want to know what yours looks like, Heather, yours would look like.
Do you want these alphabetically?
Great question.
Because in, like when we write a paper, it would have to be.
Yeah, go ahead. That's a good question. Alphabetically by the first author.
Yes.
And remember that you list the authors as they're listed on the article. You don't alphabetize the authors, right? Because author order matters. Yeah. So if you're looking at the article and this is the order that they're listed on the article, you put them that way here. We do not want to take the liberty of moving the authors around, because author order matters, because what just happened is you took me from being the principal investigator to now the fourth author, which means I didn't do as much apparently. Oh, not the fourth author. I'd be the last author. No, I wouldn't. Okay. So author order matters. Usually when you see an article with a ton of people on it, that last author was like, don't take this wrong, the lowly grad student, you know, who did something like that in terms of their contribution was the smallest amount. And so this first person right here was the person who conceptualized the idea of the study, did the bulk of the data collection, maybe the bulk of the analysis, the bulk of the writing, all of that type of stuff. Okay, so we don't change order around.
Just as kind of a weird question, but like, is there ever like drama with like who's gonna be where in the like? What do you do?
Well, if you're working on like a collaborative thing like this, where there's going to be multiple people, depending on, you know, how many, and hopefully you work with people that you like, you just have that discussion from the get-go, right? And usually, so for example, Brent and I do a lot of work together because we work in the same area. And so we'll kind of trade back and forth between who takes the lead authorship on projects. So one time I'll do it and the next time he'll do it. And we just kind of have that understanding. I think we probably talked about it one time, like way forever ago, and said we just trade off. But really the one who comes up with the idea and does the most of the work should be the lead author and get the most credit as lead author. There were times that I came to him with an idea, like I remember right when Carter was born, a special issue for TRJ came out and a call for articles for special issue, and I had an idea for it. And I went and talked to him about it and said, this would be great, and I think we could write a really good article because we had just done something similar to it. And I said, but I can't take the lead on it right now. Carter's like a week old, and this is not the time for me to be doing that. And he said, I'll do it. And so he was the lead and I was the second. And so you kind of negotiate those things.
Does that matter to the university?
It matters for tenure,
Yeah.
for faculty. It
They want
does.
you to have more, like,
There's no like rule about how many lead authorships you have to be on, but as I go up for tenure, if I was last on everything, they'd probably be like, why? Because that paints a picture that I can't start a study, take the bulk of the responsibility on me. Like I'm intentionally maybe not doing that because I don't have the skill or whatever, because the last person does the least amount of work. Now that doesn't mean that they don't do anything. If you only have 2 people on that article, probably they did equal amounts of work, right? Somebody had to be first and somebody had to be second, right? There's always a caboose. Okay, so, but when you're talking about like 4, 5, 6 people, that last person is probably just maybe editing, proofreading, editing, and writing. You're not allowed to get on articles just for doing the minimal types of things like proofreading. You have to actually write on it, or collect data on it. And so as a master's student, I was put on articles for managing databases and data sets and helping collect data. So did I do a ton of writing? Not a ton.
Yeah.
But I managed all the data, collected all the data, did all that stuff. My first online data collection experience. I was telling Hannah about it. Okay, so authorship matters. Don't switch that around. Okay, so for doctoral students, yours is going to look like Yoga is great. I am so good at like creative titles, right?
It's really a talent.
On a title page, you actually do title case.
Yeah.
Yoga is great. How to become more flexible as you age. I don't know. You can put punctuation or not, although not a period. If you wanted something like a question mark or an exclamation point, that's okay to be in a title, but not a period. Actually, I think as wouldn't be capitalized. It's not the important word. What's your middle initial? You don't have to put one. You don't have to put one. You put whatever you want.
My middle name, but it's D.
Okay, you don't have to put a middle initial, by the way.
That's okay.
So let's say I'm going to be your co-author. Okay, you also have to put people's credentials.
I waited forever for that to be. Like, somebody type that.
Okay, so that's what it would look like for the title page. If you had something that was, it should also be double spaced. And you want to put that kind of, it shouldn't be the top. You know, I've got like, what, 5 or 8 spaces down from the top. It shouldn't be the first line right at the top of the page. It's in that first third of the page. You guys probably think I'm being crazy technical and nitpicky, but this is all in APA handbook. So it should be in the first, your title should show up in the first third of the top of the page. So third down, cut into 3 is that first section.
Are you going to be like co-authors on these, or is that just an example? PhD.
We're going to talk about that today.
I was gonna say, well, in my master's, when we did our lit review, she really encouraged us to try to publish it.
And that's the same for you. I think we've talked about that in this class. If not,
A little bit, weeks ago.
yeah. You know, we're like 10 weeks into this semester and we've talked about so much, I can't even remember,
Yeah.
but we're going to talk about it
I
today.
think you briefly mentioned that it would be
Not for the
quality
master students, not for, yeah, because you guys aren't writing a lit review. But for the doctoral students, yes, I encourage you to publish. If this is something that might be a precursor to leading to your dissertation, it would be nice to have something published out there for you to cite yourself type of a thing. Yeah.
So would you, like, not necessarily a class question, but like a real life question, like, would you be willing to work with a time frame on that? Because
Yes.
I'm trying with my thesis with like 2 other publications right now, and it's like,
Oh yeah, no.
there's so much.
No. Last year's 8710 class, I had 11 doctoral students in that class, and 2 of them have actually submitted their lit reviews from this class for publication. They're still in review, but we didn't get them out until this summer. It took that long to work on all of that stuff, so it's not tied into this class. And then it just takes time to figure out that time frame, because you got stuff on your plate, I got crap on my plate, and so
like,
yeah.
I used to think like, oh my gosh, like it's been weeks. Why hasn't this professor got back with me? But it's
No.
crazy how quickly the weeks go.
It does. And this goes into kind of like a main question that a lot of you guys were making comments about, but why don't people get their stuff out? Why don't people publish? I mean, we're now merging. So any questions on formatting for annotated bibliographies? Put that reference up at the top. Do the summary on one page. Page 2 is reference number 2. So it's easier for me to get through all of that if all of them are in the same format. So that would be helpful. Thank you very much. Okay.
I have one more question. What if in the title, I have one that, one of those words that's really not, one of those words that you would normally cap, but it is in the title. Leave it capped or?
No. And that's because share. Because when you're in the reference, this right here, it doesn't matter what it looks like on the actual article itself. It should not be the title case. It needs to be sentence case. And so little sneaky thing you can do in Word, you can switch from title case to sentence case to all caps, whatever, really easily by coming up here and clicking on this big A to little a. and it can go to capitalize each word or sentence case, although it doesn't do the sentence case correctly for APA formatting right here. You'd have to change that one. Or don't do this, but you can all cap it out. Okay.
That looks good.
Yeah. So, yeah, we want sentence case, but fix that after the punctuation. But yes, so don't do it in this reference the way that it looks in the actual page, the article. They probably title case it out, but a reference should be sentence case. Okay. Any other questions about APA formatting or annotated bibliography or anything like that? Or the title page for the lit review? Okay. Okay, so that was my first lead-in question to our class discussion was, why do you guys think people don't publish? Whether it's, well, let me rephrase. I think it's different reasons for why practitioners don't publish versus researchers. So
Time consuming.
separate conversations there or discussions. Go ahead, Jake.
It's too time consuming.
Okay. That's probably the case for practitioners or researchers or, scholars, faculty scholars.
I think they don't think they have competency to do it.
Okay, competency in writing in the scholarly voice.
There's a lot of small nitpicky details you have to get right before they'll accept you.
Okay, nitpicky like what I just did,
Yeah.
but even worse than that.
Yeah, they had margins, lines. I was really surprised all you had to do for article journal.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and is it in the article that we read? It said, excuse me, it said that you can only do one article or one journal at a time.
Thank you.
I guess that makes sense.
So if it is denied, you try a different one. Yeah.
Yes.
I mean, couldn't that take years?
Yes.
Wow.
Okay, so
Yeah.
you can only submit to one journal at a time, and that's because there are copyright issues. So as soon as you submit to a journal, they don't own your article, but they kind of own your article until it's published or rejected. So I'll give you an example. I have an article that's in review right now with a journal, and it's been with this journal for 5 months, and they are dragging their feet. And I am sick of it, sick of it. And so about 3 weeks ago, 2 months ago, I wrote them an ultimatum that said, if by October 1st you haven't completed the review, I'm going to pull my article, which you can totally do. Even though they own the copyright element to it, it's still my article, and I ultimately control it until it's accepted. And so they didn't respond to my ultimatum email. So on October 1st, I said, just checking in, has the review been completed? If not, by Friday, I will pull the article. No response. And so I know, ridiculous, right? I was on fire. Okay, so I sent another email to the editor, and I copied everybody that I thought would be important to copy. I went to their website, got all these names and email addresses, right? Emailed them the day that they didn't respond, and I had given them that last ultimatum, and I said, I am formally requesting to pull my article from your review. It's been in review for this many weeks with no response. And I had, the paper trail of emails of every time I've emailed them, the response I've gotten or lack of response I've gotten. They said, this is unacceptable. And I can't submit that article until they release it. And so I have a backup journal ready to go. They haven't released it yet. And so I can't.
Sue?
I could. I think it has to be pretty egregious for me to sue.
Yeah.
But yeah, I can't submit to another place until they release it. So actually, while I was in Thailand, somebody responded and said, I'm so sorry that this has happened. There's been a miscommunication and lots of confusion about your article. I don't know why there's no confusion about an article review. I don't think there should be confusion. And they said, I've taken this directly to our editor-in-chief. Please give us 2 weeks to complete the review and blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, frick, it's been 5 months. Okay, so ultimately I'd like to complete the review though, right? Because it's been 5 months. If I submit to that backup journal, I'm starting fresh.
Yeah.
So I said, okay, I'll give you 2 weeks.
How likely is it, if you say for you, if you submit to your first choice journal, how likely is it that they'll publish it?
I've gotten everything I've submitted published.
Well,
Okay.
isn't it because we only have rec therapy? Well, you probably don't submit all rec therapy.
I don't submit to all rec therapy,
But there's
no.
only one rec therapy. So if you were.
There's 2 rec therapy
Oh,
journals.
yeah.
But
You are.
just So not everything I've submitted has been published first time. Most of what I've submitted has gone to where I wanted it to go. And there's been only 2 instances where I've submitted something and it didn't end up there, out of, 17 or 18 things that I've gotten published. So I think that you always have to have a backup plan in mind, right? So doc students, those of you who are going to go down this road potentially with this paper from class or from other articles, and it says this in that chapter that we read this week, you select a journal beforehand so that you write with those people in mind. Somebody online needs to mute their whatever, your mic. Gina, I think it might be you because I can hear you typing. Or somebody I can hear typing. Anyways, so you select a journal and have that in mind while you're writing. Why do you think we do that?
Well, so you can write accordingly to their
Yeah,
layout or whatever.
exactly. Not just to their formatting requirements, but to who their audience is, right?
Yeah.
So what are our 2 journals in rec therapy? TRJ and AJRT. Okay. So who is the audience for TRJ primarily?
Therapist.
Rec therapists, but how many of you who are working or have worked have ever seen a TRJ in your facility?
Never. I actually saw
At the VA?
Well, government places, I feel like me.
Maybe. Shannon works at a VA. Do you have a TRJ anywhere in your rec therapy office, Shannon?
No, I didn't even know what those things were, to be truthfully honest. The journals.
Yep, these are our journals for our field. TRJ does happen to have a faculty and grad student readership, okay? AJRT is a practitioner-focused journal, and while their aim is to go to practitioners, again, all you practitioners, how many of you have AJRTs in your therapy offices? None. Oh, crap. Well, because when I write an AJRT,
I have my own, but that's just because I signed up for it. I mean, it's not like my company pays for it. I get it delivered for myself.
okay, so you're going above and beyond.
Yeah.
Which is great. But when I write and intend to publish in AJRT, I'm writing with the thought that a practitioner is reading it, not another researcher who's going to nitpick my stuff, which happens a lot more when I publish in TRJ, because it does happen to be other researchers and graduate students.
they send you emails, or I don't know, do they contact you with these criticisms?
It happens in the review process. Yeah. So, yeah, so you have to know who your readership is in terms of what journal you pick.
Who's on the board for editing? Are they
Well, conveniently, AJRT lists their people right in the front.
Are they old
Some
rec
journals-
therapists or
I'm a reviewer for all of our rec therapy journals and for our general rec. So I review for Journal of Leisure Research, Leisure Sciences, Leisure Studies.
but they're not this is their job.
No. Most reviewers are other faculty members or graduate students. We get our doctoral students to be reviewers, and it is not their only job to review. But going back to your initial question, yes, some of the people who do review are our seasoned practitioners. Also, well, yeah, there are Dave Austin. I don't know that he really reviews a ton anymore, but he used to all the time. And Peg probably reviewed a lot. Not anymore though.
Brian.
Yeah, Brian for sure. Brian McCormick. Okay, so I mean, our editor-in-chief right now for AJRT is Nancy Richardson. She's a professor at University of Wisconsin-La Crosse. She's part of that older generation but mostly it's faculty who are the reviewer and editorship. So I'm an associate editor for TRJ, reviewer for everything. But yes, it can take a long time. So I would say that 6 months is not the typical publishing experience. It shouldn't. I mean, you should be to final like in press by 6 months. Usually most journals try to get back to you in about 6 to 8 weeks with a first initial decision of accept or reject or whatever. And then if you're accepted and you have to go through the review process, that's really kind of on you in terms of how long it takes you to do the reviews. If you have major reviews, it'll take longer. If it's minor reviews, it'll take not as long. But usually they'll give you kind of like an end date, like we need this back by this time in order for it to make it into press for the next issue. And if you don't make it, then it'll be pushed to the next issue. So TRJ does 4 issues a year. AJRT, I believe, does 4 issues a year. And so if you don't make it in time, they'll just keep bumping you. And then at some point they would probably say, okay, this is not okay anymore. And they would say something. But if you're really committed to publishing, you'll get it done. Especially if you're going to be a faculty member, you don't have time to just let things like dangle out in the wind type of a thing, right?
It haunts you.
It does.
When it does.
So here's a horror story. I had one article in review and revision for 3 years. And that's the worst experience I've ever had for publication. And that was because it went in, I submitted it somewhere, it got reviewed, and they rejected it. They liked it, but they just said it doesn't fit here. It's like, awesome, not awesome. And so I was so pissed about it. I like just put it away for like a year. And then I was like, oh, I need to get that out again. So pulled that out, fluffed it up, not in a bad way, but like shined it up type of a thing, submitted it elsewhere. They said they really liked it, but rejected it. Gave me a ton of really good feedback. And so I was really depressed about it. And so I didn't work on it for a couple of months. And then I pulled it back out and said, okay, I should work on this, polished that up again. And then found another place to submit it, submitted that again, and it got accepted there. But then it was another 2 years before it got totally and completely impressed out the door type of thing. And that's because it went to JLR, which kind of one of our journals exploded this year. And so, it fell apart and they disbanded the journal. Yeah. Bad news. And that happens sometimes. So it's always really important to have backup plans, right? And now it's in Leisure Science. It's that particular article with Leisure Science. So not ideal 3 to 4 year publication review process. Not typical in any ways. 6 months, I would say, is from submission to in your hands, 6 months. As a faculty member, that's a time frame. That's what we deal with. As a practitioner, that probably seems like a really long time, right? I mean, how many of you who are practicing would be like, yeah, I got 6 months to help, do this process? I mean, that's what it is. So you got to do it. But I think even as faculty members, I think we would like to see it be a faster process. But that's kind of what it is.
I have a question.
Yeah.
How often do we have to renew our IRB certification?
Okay, are you talking about?
Because we had to do it for our 8110 class. Wait, is that right?
Okay, so if you're talking about your IRB application for an individual study, you don't have to get that renewed. If you're talking about your city training.
Okay, I was just talking about what we did for 8110, which was the first one. The first one.
That's the city training, and that was where you do all those modules and like the research ethics, right?
Yeah.
You do have to renew that, and I feel like it's like every 3 years, 2 years, 2 or 3 years. If you want to maintain, your status as an active researcher. But it's free. It's just tedious.
Right on.
You guys haven't done that yet, I don't think. City training. No,
I did.
I did.
Yeah. Next semester, I think for some of you in the classes you'll take next semester.
But you don't have to do it if you're active. It's like active.
You did it at IU, right?
I did it here already too.
Oh, no, if you've already done it, then you don't have to do it again unless you have to renew. But yeah.
I did it both. Yeah.
Okay, so selecting a journal. So you choose before you write so you can cater to your appropriate audiences. You format according to the journal guidelines, and you got to know who you're writing to. Is it a research focused journal? Is it a practitioner focused journal? Do you care who's reading your stuff? I hope you do. We don't just write for our stuff to go out there and be like out in this nebulous cloud. At least I don't. I write all of my research is applied research. I'm hoping that practitioners are reading it. So it matters to me where I publish. I'm going to, let's go to some journal websites and see what that looks like.
How much does it cost to subscribe to one?
We'll look at that.
Okay.
Can somebody monitor the chat for me? It's hard for me to do that at the same time that I'm lecturing. Just let me know if people are asking questions and stuff and making comments. Just say, somebody says this. So let's go to Therapeutic Recreation Journal. Okay, so TRJ is monitored or managed by Sagamore Publishing. So this is their main website here. You can scroll down the site. Well, let's look really quick and see who they say they published to. It's published for over 50 years, a national forum for research and discussion about this. It does not say anything about who its readership really is. Huh. We can go to an author guide. I don't know, it like routes to this, which is not the right author guide. Author guidelines, there it is. In this little green box, we want author guidelines. So here, if you're gonna be an author and you're gonna submit to TRJ, you wanna go right here and find out exactly what their requirements are. Here, when an article is submitted, it's the property of TRJ. If it's not accepted, it will be returned to the author. Authors are not paid for articles, okay? So I've received invites to publish in this journal, and we have read your stuff and it's so great, we invite you to publish here, and it's like a weird sketchy journal, and they're considered predatory journals, and they don't say anything about charging until they accept you and say, oh yeah, there's a $5,000 publication fee or something weird like that. And so there are journals out there that will publish whatever you want as long as you pay their fee, and that's not okay.
They don't like edit it like as much. They just
No, they're not as rigorous, and it could be total horse crap, and as long as it sounds okay.
As long as they're making money.
As long as they're making money, yeah. So that is not,
Who reads that?
you can find some interesting stuff online. And so who reads it? Probably anybody. Who uses it? I don't know. Anyways, manuscript preparation. So here it's going to give you like all the details that you need. Standard margins, double spaced, 1-inch margins on normal size paper, no more than 27 lines of text per page. So you can put line numbers on your pages as you're writing, so you kind of know that you're meeting that. Manuscript length should be under 20 pages, including references. Yeah. So if you have like 13 pages of references, that would be bad. But that's only 3 pages of text. Well, 2 if you include a title page, okay? So not okay to do something like that, but that means that you probably want about 14 or 15 pages of text and then about roughly 5 pages of references is probably what most articles look like, okay? Sometimes your journal will give you a word limit instead of a page limit. They get really detailed here on what they want, font size and style, so you can't send like the big, I don't know what font size it is that's really big, and I hate it when I get student papers that it's obviously the big font to try to space out to meet a page limit, right? Not okay in articles. Only the title should appear on the manuscript, so they don't want any author information because things are blinded when they're reviewed. So me as the reviewer, when I get it, I don't know who's written it, and they want all that information removed. And to be honest, I don't want anybody to know that that's mine until it's out. So, because I don't want somebody to be biased against me in their review. Oh, Jasmine, I know her stuff, rah, type of a thing. But I will say we are a small field, and I have reviewed colleagues' papers and had to be objective. And so I reviewed a roommate's paper once, a former roommate's paper, and so I totally knew it was hers. So I had to be like, step back, objective, read her stuff. And I gave her all this feedback, and then I sent my stuff in. And then when I saw the actual article come out in a journal, I was curious to see if she made any of the changes. She didn't. Whatever. That kind of pissed me off. But all that work. Guidelines for submitting tables and stuff like that. Here's some info about your abstract. 150 words. So length of things is always really important to look for before you start writing, right? Do I have to be very concise, or can I embellish a little bit more? Not embellish in a bad way, but add more detail. Sometimes you just got to get right to the point. This will also tell you what kind of articles they'll accept, whether it's a full research article or a book review or a brief, a research brief, or student papers, things like that. They'll tell you in the author guidelines. You need to have a theoretical or conceptual, you need to state the need for the purpose of the paper in a conceptual or theoretical manuscript. So this is something, I think we talked about this a couple weeks ago, maybe we didn't, but this is something that's not database, a theoretical or conceptual manuscript. And so this is something like doctoral students, what you might publish is, you don't have any data to go with your lit review, but you're making a case for why a study should happen in this area. That would be like a conceptual paper.
I was going to ask you tonight, for a previous lit review, we added our theory, like we had to have a theory along with it. You do that.
Yep, always have a theory. Yeah. Okay, so here's the information about APA formatting. It gives you an example of a book. It gives examples of articles in lots of different ways. But even though they give examples here, always good to refer to the APA manual. Here's some more info on manuscript preparation. All the different, well, I guess some tips of how they want you to write things. If you do a case report, they give you the format for that in narrative content. So if you're going to submit a data-based manuscript, then this is where you want to look, manuscript preparation. If you're going to do a narrative or whatever. Student abstracts. This is awesome, guys. You can publish your work before you're like a big-time faculty member or anything like that. You can do stuff now. And so you can go in here and look at what it would look like. So if you wanted to publish your thesis, so not a full article, but a little bit about something that you did, and 1,300 words, what is that, like 7-ish pages? 6 or 7 pages? That's not too bad, right? I mean, 20 pages is not too bad for me. I'll just keep on writing, but, you know.
If your thesis is like really good information that is the founder, can you, like, do journals sometimes accept them?
Not as a thesis format, but in an article format, yeah. And if you got like a rock star thesis or dissertation, it should be in an article, not as like a student work type of a thing. It is student work, but it should be a full manuscript. Okay. They do have an online submission system. Most journals have online submission systems now. And so you upload your documents, you build a little profile, you upload your documents. It asks you questions like, has this ever been submitted for review, or is this currently under review elsewhere? So that's an honor system thing. You should say no, and it shouldn't be in review elsewhere. But weird random story, I have a colleague, a friend who is a reviewer at multiple journals, and once was given the same journal article to review by 2 different journals. So somebody submitted it in 2 places at once. And so, yeah, big red flag, right? No bueno. So that person did not get accepted. They didn't even review it. As soon as she saw the manuscript come through from 2 different journals and asking her to review it, hey, we think you're based on your expertise, you'd be a good reviewer for this article. And then a different journal, the same thing. She was like, called the editors, and then they just said no to that author. And then like blacklisted them type of thing. So, yeah, it is an honor system thing, but that doesn't mean that you won't get caught. All right, so this is TRJ. Most most journals do the exact same thing. Here's another journal that I'm publishing in lately. This is a military journal. They have also an instruction thingy for their author guidelines. And it's this whole 15-page document, and they get really, really detailed about how they want things formatted. They use a whole different, they don't do APA, they do Vancouver style, which I've never heard of exactly. You guys, your faces are like, what? Yeah, so I had to look it up to see what the differences between APA and Vancouver were, and I mean, I don't know how to do it, so that's going to be interesting. But yeah, one thing though that I found interesting about this is that it's a Canadian journal. And in here, when they talk about what type of work they accept, it talks a lot about the Canadian military. And I was like, well, shoot, what if I submitted something from the US military? Are they going to be like, reject right away? So I just emailed the editor and said, I'm a researcher in the United States, and I have something I think could fit in your journal, but I read your description of what you accept, and it seems to focus on the Canadian military. Could I submit to you? And they said, no, we welcome anything on any military from any country. And I was like, sweet. So you can always email an editor and ask if your idea is appropriate for that journal. And that's better than not asking, going through the process of writing it for that journal, and then submitting, and the second, they look at it, they're like, nope. Okay. So it's really like a 5-minute email that could save you months and months of work. So really quick, I'll also gonna type it out here. There are levels of acceptance and such, or kind of when articles are submitted. You can have something called a desk reject. And so this is something where it comes into, like, say I'm the associate editor for the journal, it would come in to me and I would read your abstract and just outright reject it. It doesn't even go out for review. And that happens when, so you'd know the same day or within the week of submitting it. That happens when you submit something that is so not a fit with the topic of the journal, or that's usually the big issue, is the topic, or that you submitted something that doesn't fit within the type of articles they accept. Gosh, sorry. So one time I submitted a qualitative article to the Journal of Autism and Developmental Disorders, and I got a desk reject the same day saying, this is awesome, but we don't accept qualitative work. Yeah, so I had to find some other journal for it. But it didn't say anything in their description about not accepting qualitative work. And so I don't know why that happened, but it just did. So that's a desk reject. And it's harsh, but it saves everybody time. Okay, so if it doesn't get desk rejected, yay, it'll go out for review. Yay! And hopefully this takes roughly 6 to 8 weeks to get your initial review back. And generally it would go to 2 separate reviewers. They would each look at it independent of each other, not even knowing who the other person is. And usually there's a review form that they'll follow in the process of going through your article, and they'll give you, hopefully, good constructive feedback. I've gotten crappy feedback before, and then I've gotten stellar feedback. And so honestly, it's hit or miss. You never know what you're going to get. There are some situations where there might be a 3rd reviewer, but lately everything I've gotten has only been 2 reviewers. Sometimes special issues will have 3 reviewers. Okay, so let's say it goes out to review. They spend their 6 to 8 weeks reviewing it, and then they make a decision. What are these decisions that they could do? None of this was in that chapter. It could be rejected. Oh, well, wait. If it's going to get rejected, why didn't they just tell me from the beginning? What's the difference, do you think?
The other reviewers they liked what they saw up until that point. Like they didn't.
Yeah, no, you're on the right track. So
It fit with the big picture, but maybe the article itself was not acceptable.
exactly. So even if something goes out for review and gets rejected, that's okay. You're going to get feedback. You don't get feedback on a just reject. The editor or the AE just says, sorry, no, and that's it, and don't submit again or whatever. If you go out to review and they ultimately say it's rejected, they're going to say, here's the reason why. And they'll say it was poorly written, you did not have good statistical methods or whatever, or you treated people unethically, blah, blah, blah. But you'll get that feedback, so that's great. You could have it be accepted with major revisions. So yay, right? Accepted. It might take months and months of work to make all those revisions, but generally if it's accepted, even if you have major revisions, it's going to be published. It might take a little more time, but it'll get out there. You can have accepted with minor revisions, and they could be really minor, like your APA formatting is off. Everything else is great, but your APA formatting is off. That would be an awesome minor revisions because that's an easy fix, right? Sometimes you get people who are weirdly nitpicking things. Well, why did you use this word instead of this word? And again, if that's the minor revisions, you know, it's stupid and okay, I'll make the change type of a thing.
If you disagree.
You can disagree, absolutely. Mm-hmm. Like my former roommate who did not make any of the changes that I suggested. Something can be accepted outright, which rarely ever happens. This means not a thing is going to change. They just say accept and it will go to the next issue. If that happened, I know. I don't know anybody that's ever happened to. Okay, actually I do. Brian McCormick told me that he got one article accepted outright. But that fits, doesn't it?
He's Brian.
Because he's Brian McCormick, exactly. But yeah, that doesn't happen too often. Okay, so there's this, what?
I feel like he made the
I know. So there's this other weird category of revise and resubmit. This isn't accepted, but it's not rejected either. It's in this weird limbo of what's going to happen to this article. This is something where it wasn't so bad from the get-go that they just didn't even review it. And it wasn't so bad after going through a review that they didn't want it, but it's just not quite right. And they don't feel right about accepting it, but they're going to give you another chance. We really like where you're going with this, but they will give you copious amounts of feedback for a revise and resubmit. And this might be like a total restructure of your paper. It might be we want you to redo your analysis. We really like what you did, but we didn't agree with what you did statistically, so do this, this, and this instead. And that takes a lot of work. It's almost like rewriting it completely. You're not starting from scratch, but it's going to take a ton of work. And it could be rejected after you make those revisions. Yeah. Sorry.
Would be an example of a major?
A major revision?
Yeah.
So I had an article this summer get reviewed and come back with major revisions, and they didn't agree with the analysis that I did, and they suggested a different analysis. And after I looked into it, I was like, totally right. That's a better analysis. Okay, so I'm not a statistician, so I don't know everything, and I didn't have a statistician on this project with me. And so after they made that recommendation and I looked into it, I was like, yeah, that makes sense. And then I looked up how to do it, and I was like, I cannot do that by myself. So I went and got myself a statistician and said, did a review. They recommended this analysis. Can you do it for me? And they did it for me. And then I put them on as a co-author, that statistician. Actually, it's a doctoral student here at Clemson in the stats department. And so, so then I redid that and resubmitted it. And so I'm waiting on it to hear back. But that would be a major revision because that really changes everything in your discussion and how you interpret things, right? So I did this analysis and it came up with these findings, but a totally different analysis could come up with completely different results, in which case I have to rewrite the whole discussion. I don't have to change any of that intro lit review methods stuff. We'll have to change the analysis part of the methods, but I would totally have to change the discussion. So that would be major revisions. Major revisions would be, usually it's not one thing that leads to major revisions. It's usually like a series of things, right? So your APA formatting sucks, your grammar sucks, the structure and flow of your, actually, as I'm listing all of these things off, if all of these together were in one article, I would say reject. But
and as a reviewer, like what do you see as the majority of where most first submissions land?
Accepted with major. No, let me rephrase that. It depends on what journal we're talking about. the last 2 or 3 things that I have submitted or I've reviewed for TRJ have been rejects. Not a desk reject, it's been to review, and I've reviewed it and I've rejected it, recommended rejection. But we also accept a lot of things, but mostly it's major revisions. You have to be a really good writer to get minor revisions. Interestingly, that person used a model that me and Dr. Hawkins developed and published in a previous, article, and they used it and they did it wrong. And I don't know if they knew that they were going to get me as one of their reviewers. And so as I was reading through their article and they were making all of these conclusions about their study based off of an incorrect interpretation of this model, I was like, nope. And literally that's what I was putting in track changes. Nope, nope, nope. And so that's what I do as a reviewer. I go through and I kind of do these initial, my thoughts, and then I'll go back through with the details. And so then afterwards I went back through and I said, this is not the correct way to interpret this. I even got the article out and read what they were citing. And I'm like, how are they reading it this way? Because that is not what this says. I mean, I was thinking back to when we wrote that and I was like, that's not what we intended. And this is not what it says. And so I was just like, no, they just totally spaced it.
Does someone usually get it reviewed before it's sent
You should.
to the, okay.
This is what co-authors do,
Yeah.
right? And this is what advisors do, and this is what your parents do. So I will say that when I first started writing, I sent my mom a lot of my stuff, and she was like, "Beautiful, Jazz, I love it." And I'm like, "No. I need you to be critical, okay? Because somebody's gonna rip this to shreds, and I would rather have it be you do it first than after it goes to colleagues who, whatever." And so I would send it out to somebody to read in its entirety before I submit it somewhere. But once you really get into like writing as a faculty member, it's really your colleagues and your co-authors who do that stuff. I mean, some people write by themselves. Brian McCormick writes by himself, but he's a freaking genius, right? Yeah. I haven't written anything by myself. I think I'd be a little scared, right? Because that's like one voice saying something and you come across as like the expert, right? So who do you know that writes by themselves? Bandura.
By yourself, right?
No, but not when you get it published, it's not. So Alfred Bandura, what is his theory? That he's like the sole writer about? Self-efficacy theory? Yeah. When you cite self-efficacy, who are you citing? Bandura. Not Bandura, blah, 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 and blah, blah, blah. It's just Bandura, right? So, yeah, I'm not there yet. I don't know if I ever will be. But yes, you always, generally, you write with other people and they are reading your stuff, yeah.
So if a graduate student has some really good stuff,
Mhm.
we submit the thesis in thesis form for the school part.
Yes.
So would you develop the article then after graduation? Or?
We're going to get there today. I'll talk about this. I'm jumping ahead, but that's okay. I know, actually, a lot of your guys' questions and comments in the discussion were about this. And I know there was a section in the reading about it, but you're all jumping way far ahead. You're not there yet, but we'll talk about it in class today. I felt a little bit of anxiety come through some people's comments. Okay, so this is what the options are for accepting or rejecting publications. And everybody goes through this. And I remember the very first article I submitted was an accept with minor revisions, and I was excited about it. And then I read the feedback, and these people, I don't think they knew who I was, but they knew the area of research that I was doing, and they didn't like the person, the main core and balance area. They didn't like Raymond Zabriskie, who is the person who created it, and it was clear because they made all these comments on my paper. I don't understand why Raymond chose to name these categories core and balance. I think it's stupid. Literally, it said, I think it's stupid. And then, so it's like they were a Raymond hater, and it was coming through in comments on my paper. Even though he was a co-author with me on that paper, they didn't know it was a blind review, right? But they took it out on me.
Does he read those comments?
Oh yeah, I called him and I was like, Raymond, this is what they said. And he was like, people don't like me. And that was like my first experience with publication and how like the stupid crap that goes on behind the scenes, right? And so you have to really not take it personally. And you got to develop that thick skin, right? Because people are reading to critique. And critique can be constructive. And hopefully your reviewers are good reviewers and they give you the constructive feedback to make it better. But there is always going to be that jerk reviewer who just, why didn't you cite so-and-so, so-and-so? Well, he's saying, why don't you cite me, right? And that happens too. So yeah, publishing is a fun little interesting experience. Okay, so we select our journal. We know ahead of time who we're writing for, how we're going to submit it. Only one journal at a time, but always have a backup. Okay, so the different sections of an article. We got the introduction. In an article, this is really like intro, lit review combined into one section. In a thesis or dissertation, your lit review is a totally different section. So your intro is a couple pages and your lit review is like 10 pages. In an article, it's all like 1 page. Intro, lit review, which seems crazy, I know, but that's how it is. Or like 2 pages. But this is where you hook your readers, right? So tell them, paint a picture of what the problem is and say, this is why we need to deal with this, and get them interested in what you're talking about. Your methods section, so explain what you did in detail. If you did an intervention, all the details about that, what your data collection procedures were, who your sample is, et cetera, et cetera. If somebody wants to replicate your study, this is where they're going to get all the details to do it. And we want replication in research, right? And we shouldn't have a bunch of these like one-off studies. Hopefully we have a study that's been done over and over and over again and produces all the same findings. And then we can say, yes, this is what happens when you do yoga. You get flexible. But if in this one study it's flexible, in this other study you don't get flexible, in this other study you get a hangnail, and in this other study you get a sprained eyelash, like there's no consistency in the findings, right? And so how do you really say that yoga is good for you if it's all different across the boards? And because everybody's doing something different, right? So replication is good in research, but you need those details in the methods section in order to replicate.
I think it was in the methods section, they mentioned that they would also, and I didn't quite understand this, was about the appropriate committees. And I wrote, what are the appropriate committees? Like,
Appropriate committees. Let me read that sentence again.
I think it was part of the methods. I have to go back to the electronic.
Appropriate committees. So you need to tell them about methods.
I think it was all of this when it talked about how many were studied, what criteria, how to select all that, and it goes, and then that it was reviewed by the appropriate committees, and I was like, what are those?
Oh, this is usually you have one sentence in your methods section that says this study was approved by the Institutional Review Board,
And that's it?
yeah, and that
Okay.
just means that you have research ethics has approved what you've done, that you're not gonna, give your research participants syphilis or something like that in all of science, right?
Right.
Because that's what people used to do.
Right. Okay. Thank you.
Yes, so lots of details about what you did. The results. So in the results, you just report the findings. So only the numbers, or if you're talking about a qualitative study, only the quotes that then turned into themes and stuff like that. But you'll report the themes and how you group things together, but there's no interpretation on this. So you shouldn't have anything in the results that says, this means blah, 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 or we interpret, no, nothing like that in the results. It's just the numbers. And the results section is usually like your shortest section. Unless you're doing qualitative work, it's your biggest section, but in quantitative work, it's your shortest section generally. You can put tables and charts in your results section too. Okay, then the discussion. This is the most important part of a journal article, and usually it's the part that gets glossed over by students and some faculty writers as well, because this is really the hardest part to write as well. Now what? We've done this study, here's the results, now what? So what, now what, who cares type of a thing? All of that should be in the discussion. Why does this matter? And what are we gonna do with this now that we have this knowledge? Definitely the part that gets skipped, and unfortunately is the most important part. How many of you guys kind of skip all of that intro lit review methods and go right to discussion when you're skimming your articles? Hey, it's okay, be honest. I used to do that too as a master's student. Okay, what if that discussion section was just like, not really much interpretation in there, not much thought put into it, no meat to it? It'd be kind of a waste of an article, right? So this is why after you do a data analysis and you get those numbers, you kind of just have to let it sit. You have to let it sit, think about it, sleep on it for a couple of days, and really think about why it matters to your study. Did you answer your question? If not, why? What happened? What does it mean? Is there no difference between pre and post in your intervention? Well, what does that mean? Does your intervention not work? Well, let's talk about this. Was it a 1-day thing or a 1-week thing? Does that matter? You know, so all of that can be thought about and talked about in a discussion, and hopefully is. You should also talk about the limitations in your study. No study is perfect. Everything always has problems. And this is where you can talk about it, is in the discussion, in the limitations section of a discussion. And you should also, generally limitations lead to making recommendations about how to improve in the future. So future research in this area could use a bigger sample size, should do this type of an analysis, should do this, this, and this. So hopefully if somebody's really interested in replicating what you're doing, they see your method section and then they see your recommendations, or the limitations and then your recommendations, and they say, okay, I'll make it better next time. I'll replicate it, but take their recommendations and improve for the next time. There should also be some talk about implications for practice if you're going to publish in rec therapy journals, right? Because we're talking in this class specifically about application or research in practice. So if we don't apply our findings to practice, that's a disconnect, right? Nobody's going to take it and apply it to practice. Okay, so we have to sometimes you have to tell people how to do it. This is why this matters for you, practitioner.
What if yours doesn't fit into the practice, like mine, where I'm doing research on social skills and people in Special Olympics? Like, that's not really going to fit into practicing in the rec therapy field.
It's related, though.
Right. I just meant like application to practice. Like, I couldn't throw that in.
I think you could.
Really?
This is why it matters. So, because aren't you comparing unified to something else?
Traditional.
Yeah. So let's just say in the course of your study, you find out that unified is the better way to develop social skills. Now you're going to say, practitioners, do it this way. And that's your implications to practice. Stop doing it this other way because this study says that this is the better way to do it.
Right on.
So then all those people who don't read your article.
I guess also, there are a lot of rec therapists that are going to be like helping me like give out this assessment that I have, that have only ever worked in the community. They've never worked like in like a locked mental health facility or something like that. So they're all really interested in this like research topic that I have, and are really willing to help, and they're really excited about reading it. So I think there's a good application for it for the rec therapists.
Yeah, you have direct ties to the implication for practice.
Yeah.
So, I mean.
All right. I wasn't thinking about it that broadly. I was thinking about it as like my current job.
Yeah, I mean, not all research has an applied element to it. But if in the context of this class, we're talking about doing research in practice, then you should be able to make some implications for practice. But even if you don't do research in practice, because I don't practice. I do research with practitioners, but I am not practicing myself, but all of my research has implications for practice. Okay, so that's the discussion. Okay, so this chapter also talked about having a conclusion in addition to a discussion. I've not really seen that in a ton of articles. but it doesn't have to be anything crazy. It could be like a one paragraph, wrap it all up. Here's what this study was about, and very quickly, one sentence or less, here's what happened, and this is why it matters, the end, type of a thing. Okay, so then we go into our reference page, again, formatted to what your journal specifies. TRJ is an APA format. AJRT is an AMA format, totally different. Why do you have to be so different? Gosh. Okay, but I'm going to show you guys, I think I've shown some of you guys this. Do you all know what a citation manager is? I think I'm going to show you one. You guys should all get a citation manager. It's free. This one is called Mendeley, but there are other ones called like RefWorks or EndNote, or I think there's one called BibText. There's one called Zotero. I don't know. There's a million different kinds. I really like Mendeley. Basically, you build a library so you can see all these little citations here. These are articles that I have found and read and thought, these are going to be great for my research. I'm going to put it into my library.
Can you blow that up a little bit?
I
don't know if that's possible.
I cannot blow that up. I can't zoom this. Sorry.
First.
Okay. So you have to build your library. And so, if you're going to use a citation manager, people who are doing a thesis and a dissertation absolutely use a citation manager. Projects, it's not as vital, but for sure, those of you in class should be doing this, and the online doc students. There is a nice little, in Mendeley, Mendeley does this, but I have a little plugin right here. So let's say that I'm in like Google Scholar, and I find something great about social skills, and I find this awesome article right here, and I want it in my library. Oh, that's not an article. Make sure you actually get articles. Okay, here's an article. Okay, so I read this abstract and I think this is fantastic. I'm going to get this article and I'm probably going to cite it. I can click on this little button over here and it will import the citation into my library, which is awesome. I have to sign in, but
I have Mendeley and I don't have that.
yeah, you have to add, and you go Google Mendeley add-in and it'll,
Let me do the add-in.
you have a weird computer.
Oh, it's already done.
Yeah. We can work on that, troubleshoot that later. Anyways, it will put it in here. All of that information that you needed for that citation, it's all in here. Okay, so you build your library. You have this huge running library of awesomeness. All these articles that you've read that you know you're going to put in your paper. So then you can start writing and say,
Wait, where do you get the doc from?
the what?
Like the document? Sorry.
The document.
Like you started writing, did you go from Word or did you go on there?
Oh no, I just went to Word.
Okay.
So now I'm writing my article.
Okay.
Yay, writing my article. Yoga is great, and I want to cite somebody. And I know that I have this great article about yoga being great. Go away, toolbar. How do I make you go away? In Word and a Mac, this is what it looks like. It looks different in Word on a PC. I'm going to insert a citation. And I know that I have a citation that goes with my comment of yoga being great. And I wrote that article. Shouldn't be taking this long. Yep. Okay.
Remember how to do it?
Yoga is great. Yoga is fantastic. Now I'm going to put in another one. Well, I know actually these 3 other people who have written about it. Marika has written about it. Who else has written about it? I don't know if I have any Brandy. Oh, I do. Oh, but that's a Paralympic military thing, but let's pretend. Who else has written something about it? There you go. Okay, so 3 people say that yoga is fantastic. And there they all are. And it's just, while I'm going, I'm entering all these articles in. Okay, so now I've finished my paper about, yep. And now I'm gonna tell it to put my reference page in there. And so there's my reference page.
Wait, where did you click reference page?
I just blew everybody's mind.
Well,
Yeah, I'm like,
Okay. Insert bibliography.
Mind blown for sure.
Insert bibliography. It just did it for me. And it's completely formatted to APA format because I told Mendeley way back here when I was setting up my library that that's what style I wanted it to use. So I went to citation style, APA. But let's say I want to do it in AMA style, right? Because that's what AJRT is. Well, I can select it here and it doesn't change anything in my library. But when I go to my paper, sorry, delete. Choose citation style. I have to choose a new style here. AMA. Use this style. Go back to my paper, and it has changed it for me. And then I can insert my reference page, and it's in AMA style. Kate, I love your responses. I can't hear you, but I can see your body language in your face right now, and it's great. Okay, so seriously, this is like a life and sanity saver. When you are writing a thesis or dissertation, or when you merge into being a scholarly writer, or even for your project if you want to use it for your project. Almost everything, EndNote is not free, but Mendeley is free, RefWorks is free. Mendeley is awesome because it's cloud-based. So I have it downloaded on my computer, but you sign up for an account. And every time I do something on the Mendeley desktop on my computer, it updates it in the cloud. So if I don't have my laptop with me and let's say I'm working in the library on campus, I can just sign into mendeley.com. It brings up my library and I'm working on my paper and I can just keep on working on the same paper with the same references, hit save. I could even find new references and load them up into the cloud-based Mendeley on the library computer. And then when I come back and open it on my laptop, it just syncs it. And now it adds all those new references in. The other cool thing that it does is if you're collaborating with somebody, like say your second author or your third author, co-author, you have different Mendeley libraries, right? But you're working on the same paper and maybe, Molly, you found some citations that I don't have. So if you send me the paper and now it's my turn to work on it and you have added some citations in there, when I open it up and try to add a citation, it will say, hey, you have 4 citations in the paper that are not in your library. Do you want them in your library? And it will import them into my library. So now we have all the same stuff. And then I'm going to write and add some citations into it and send it back to you. And it'll say, hey, Molly, you've got some citations that aren't in your library. Do you want to add them? And it'll take them and add them, which is fantastic because it can get really hard, especially when you've got lots of writers on a paper and everyone's contributing, to kind of keep that reference page up to date. If people don't add that in by hand as they add citations, then things get lost. And then if you don't check all that stuff at the end before you submit it, definitely that will get caught in a review. There's been very many times where I've been doing a review and I'll come across a statement that has a citation. I'm like, ooh, that sounds interesting. And I'll go down and want to see the full citation. And it's not in their reference list. And I'm like, well, where the crap did they get that from? So citation managers are fantastic. Thoughts about it? Mind blown.
Awesome.
Yeah. Okay. Get one. Give in to the peer pressure. Get one. Just do it with a Nike swoosh. All right. Okay. Let's take a quick break and come back at 7:30, and we will talk about converting a thesis and/or dissertation. Woo-hoo.
There's some company machines downstairs. Take that.
Yes.
We do. Karen asked if we could put the link to it somewhere on campus.
The link to Mendeley.
I just downloaded
I
it
sure
right
can.
So I had it on my other computer.
Mhm.
I just I'm gonna have to read
Yeah, you can log in.
It logs in and transfers them.
Yeah.
You log in.
Uh-huh. Remember, it's cloud-based, so you could have it on 10 different computers, and it's the same library every time,
Okay.
as long as you sync it.
Awesome. Like, I can't wait to use that.
It usually It automatically syncs, but sometimes it doesn't. You just have to tell it to sync.
That'll be a task this week.
Other people who are not in this class are jealous because they're like, you guys are learning so much helpful stuff.
What?
Yeah, oh yeah.
Well, because I was reading for this discussion and I was sitting with other people who were in a different cohort.
Mhm.
And I was like, I was excited about it. I was like, look at this, you know.
Like other PRTM students, not RT
Oh, yeah,
students.
and for veterinary sciences, my friend made me send her the evidence table. And I was telling her about it. Like, I'm always
I've already
telling
signed a
people
couple.
stuff, and they're like, oh my god, can you see that? I'm like, yeah.
That's
And I was
funny.
like, hey, we're not learning this right now. Oh my god. And I was freaking out. And then, well, we're just a really good class. So.
Mhm.
I've sent 2 people that evidence table because they want to like practice with it.
That's awesome. Yeah, this is a fun class. I developed this class, and it has gotten better every year. And I'm not making major changes every year, but every year I ask the students for feedback at the end of the semester, and every year somebody has offered some new little nugget that I never do an overhaul every year. I just do one change every year. And so because of that, you guys give me feedback that makes it better every year. And seriously, every year I'm like, yes. So last year was the first time that I was like, yeah, I'm so excited to go to 8710. And I feel like that again this year. Like, I have to be somewhere at 8:30 at night. It better be for something like this, you know, for people saying things like this, like, oh, I'm learning stuff that other people aren't. That makes me really happy because I don't know how people can't learn, like, don't learn this stuff and survive. I see this as being like vital
Oh, yeah, I
information
know.
for
So
grad
that's, like,
school.
That's what I
Would have
understand,
changed
especially for
undergrad.
veterinary sciences, like they dig deep into like research heavy, like beginning. Like she's like dying pretty much, and she was like, I need that right
First
now.
semester in?
Yeah, like I don't know if she's because she's like studying sheep, and pretty much they begin doing the sheep work immediately, like in the summer when they get here. And so she already has to be collecting her data and stuff. And so she like, yeah, she was like, I need that right now. I'll send it to you.
I don't know. If they don't have it incorporated into a class, then it's going to fall on the advisor's shoulders to teach all this stuff. We can't teach this to you guys outside of class.
Yeah,
Like
yeah.
just through weekly advisor, 1 hour advisor meetings. No way. How could we teach all this stuff? But we also developed it in this class to happen before you guys take research methods, because which is next
so
semester,
helpful.
which they're going to say, okay, now write your proposal, and you guys are going to know.
Like,
You'll already have an idea.
yeah, hopefully by
Mhm.
January.
Well, maybe not solid, but you'll have a good idea about a topic, and by the end of spring semester, by April, it'll be solid, and you'll be ready to propose. That's the thinking. But, you know, a lot of people outside of this program don't get that. They just get thrown into research methods, and it's like, come up with an idea. That's what my experience was like. But I already had an idea, so I was kind of ahead of the game on that one. But I remember thinking back and with my little cohort mates, and they're in the grad office, like banging their head against the wall, like, I don't know what to do for my thesis. You know, and it's the end of their first year when you basically have to be ready to propose. So we did not want that to be the experience here.
Yeah, this class is pretty awesome.
Yeah, I really like it.
Yeah, so Shannon's comment on there, I wish I took this class my first semester, but I will say rewriting my thesis now is way less stressful. Yeah, because you are getting more I mean, this is the information you're supposed to get first. So then writing it later on, a proposal is not meant to be like this death, you know, process. So yeah, so Shannon, Holly, and Jake, you guys all started in the off cycle, and you guys are not the first ones to do that, but you will be the last ones to do that because we're not allowing people to start in the spring anymore.
I almost did.
Yeah.
I right after undergrad I was going to.
Yeah, no, well, we
Really
have,
glad I didn't.
actually this spring is our last cohort of spring people because they were already in the system, but we're not letting people do it anymore.
I can see why you guys wouldn't be letting people do that after going through what we did. I mean, it wasn't bad. It's just now that I'm taking these classes, it's like, oh, research methods would have been like 20 times easier It's still not easy, but it would have been like, I would have felt like I could have done a better job on the proposal. Like now I feel like I have to redo almost all of it. Well, I'm kind of changing it anyway, but there's so many things that I feel like would have been helpful to know beforehand before I spent all that time doing it. So
I know. You guys have made so many comments like in the chat, like, this would have been good to know last semester. That it continued to like reinforce. I'm really glad you guys made those comments, because in my heart I knew that we shouldn't have Spring Start people because it gets you guys out of sequence, especially with these first 2 research classes. But to see your chat all the time about it, finally I was just like, Marika, we cannot let people start in the spring anymore. They're commenting about it all the time. She's like, okay. So
yeah, I think that's a good idea. It's nice to be able to like offer a different start date just for people's like schedules and stuff. But when the classes are only offered at a certain time or whatever, it's too difficult, I think. Anyways,
yeah.
I'm sure Shannon and Jake feel the same too. So
Yeah, because it's definitely like throwing me off, because I literally have nothing to do next summer and semester. I'm like, well, can I just graduate early? Like, I'm done. I'm writing my thesis now, and I'm going to implement it in February, and I'm going to be done by August with it. So it's like, it is so stressful.
Shannon.
Yeah, I'm like, I was crying in that class every night because I was like stressing out. My boyfriend was like trying to calm me down. And I was like, I don't know how to fucking write this shit. I haven't been in school in 5 years. This is ridiculous. And he's just like, I don't know what to tell you. I was like, I suck at grammar. And it was just a hot mess.
Oh, I totally understand.
Guys, don't let that like freak you out about your thesis.
You are way better off having taken these classes first this semester, going into research methods.
You what?
Oh, yeah. It makes it like a piece of cake now.
Yeah.
Like, I'm going through and
I didn't know they have those interviews. Yeah. I was like,
Oh man, you know what else I left in my office? My cell phone. To call campus police to open my office. Yeah, so I'm gonna need some help after class.
on your cell phone and computer.
Yay!
I'm here for you.
Okay. All right. So who are we missing? Oh, we got Claire back. Okay. So coming back to our discussion about getting our information out there, let's talk about converting a thesis into an article, or a dissertation into an article. When you guys get to this stage, so actually next semester, all of you will get this, although Heather, you'll get this in residency this coming summer.
I'm doing it right now.
You got your book?
No, I'm doing it for my thesis from IU.
Oh, no, you'll get this in the summer. So we have a thesis guide. Yay. Yep, and a little bound. Everybody gets a little spiral bound one, and it's so fun. You can put little tab thingies in it. And we also have a dissertation guide. And what this is going to do is teach you how to format your thesis, everything that needs to go in, or dissertation, in all the sections that you need. So this is an introduction. This is what an introduction is for. This is how you should write an introduction. Here's an example of an introduction, type of a thing. Here's a lit review. This is why we do a lit review. Here's what goes in a lit review. Here's some examples of a lit review, type of a thing. Okay. Same thing with methods, and so it helps you develop your proposal. But we want you guys to publish your thesis or your dissertation, or if your project is totally awesome sauce, we want you to publish that as well. And so if you want the thesis guide to help you format your project, you're welcome to have that. I have a digital copy if you want it online as well. So just let me know, I can send it. Anyways, so because we want you to publish good research, we want to help it be good from the get-go, right? So we are going to help you set up a thesis or a dissertation or project in an article format, which means you do all the work for having the article ready to go up front, not at the end. And so in the chapter, they said that it can be this huge, long process to convert a thesis or a dissertation into an article, not when you write an article format thesis. So generally a thesis or dissertation is 5 chapters: intro, lit review, methods, results, discussion, right? In an article format, it is 6 chapters, 6 or 7. Intro, lit review, methods, then your article. And inside your article is your results and a discussion. And then you have your 5th chapter is like a conclusion that talks about the overall study. So in your chapter 4, which is your article, you've got an intro, lit review, methods, a results, and a discussion, right? It's a full article embedded in the middle of your dissertation or your your thesis. Now, in a dissertation, you'll have 3 articles because you'll have 3 aims. So you'll have 7 chapters: intro, lit review, methods, article 1, 2, 3, and then a conclusion. Okay, so I'll show you an example. Here's my thesis. This was my finished thesis, 5 chapters. Okay, I got my thesis published, but it was not this long, right? I had to chop this thing down. How many pages is this? This is 112 pages. Okay, the article that got published is like 20 pages.
Wait, what'd you say? Subtract 28 pages for reference.
Well, that too, but no, the article that got published was like 20 pages. So this is 112, so there's like 90 pages that are not going to get published. Oh, doesn't that suck? All this work. Yeah, you can bind your thesis. Okay, here's my dissertation. This is 207 pages. Okay, but yes, it is double the work. A dissertation is a lot harder. But within this, there are 7 chapters. There are 3 articles in here. Okay, so if I were to show you,
are the 3 articles, the content is the same because it's from the same dissertation,
yes,
but is one managed more for like AJRT, and
yeah,
then one for like TRJ?
Yeah.
Okay.
So here is my chapter 1, 2, and 3. Intro, lit review, and methods. It's about 35 pages long, 36 pages. And then here's chapter 4, which is labeled manuscript number 1. And it has a title. And it's formatted for APA format. The whole entire thing is APA format, but this got published in AJRT. And so at the end of my defense, and after I officially got everything done, I just, extracted this from the PDF and changed it to AMA style because I used Mendeley, right? Click, click. That's all it took to switch it from APA to AMA. And then I literally just hit submit. I didn't have to make any changes to my manuscript because I did all that work up front to get it into article format. So as soon as my committee said, check, you've passed graduation, I had 3 articles ready to submit. Okay, so here's article 1, and it is in this format, 20 pages. And then here's article 2.
So what is the articles about? For PhD, it's different.
Is it the
right?
same thing?
No,
Is
it's
it
the same.
article?
It's
in a
this.
different way?
So it's
No,
like
it's
the
3 different
overview
articles.
section?
No, it has, each one of these has an intro, lit review, methods, results, discussion, each one of these
So
articles.
it's like you can have many articles
in your entire dissertation. You will have one mini article in your entire thesis. You'll only have one in a
so
thesis
that's what you're telling us we're doing because you want us to
because we want you to submit,
We're
right?
condensing it all while we're reading.
You're condensing it all into an article while you're writing. So as you do your proposal, you'll write it intro, lit review, methods, right? And then as soon as you start collecting data, you already know what this article is going to be because you plan for it ahead of time. You wait until the data comes in and then you do your analysis and then you start writing the results. But while that's all happening, you can start condensing that 30 to 40 pages of a proposal into, you really have to get to your methods by about page 5. So start condensing that 30-ish pages, 30 to 50 pages down into 5 pages. And then as soon as you've got your analysis done, you can start writing up those results and your discussion. And that becomes your 4th chapter in your thesis. And then you just have a concluding chapter that wraps it all up. Overall, here's how things went. You can talk about what your experience was like collecting the data, stuff that would not go in an article, totally inappropriate, right? But that could go into the conclusion chapter of your thesis, not the article. Okay, so in my conclusion of my dissertation, so none of the stuff that I put in here is in any of the articles, none in this chapter. I summarized the major findings of my 3 articles in 1 paragraph. Spent 20 pages talking about it. Now I summarize it into 1 paragraph, right? And then I kind of just like did some personal reflection about how I thought it went. It was great. It crashed and burned. Here's why I thought it crashed and burned. Maybe next time I'll do this. Here's how my little research assistants did and how I got them ready. And maybe I would do it like this next time. That stuff's not going to get published, but it's the conclusion to my entire study, right? So
for our thesis, say, you know, we find that it didn't work, like what, like your intervention or whatever, like it, well, could our thesis still get approved?
Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay.
You don't need significance just to pass.
Okay.
Not everything is significant. There's not always change.
But that's okay.
But that's okay. Hopefully it's because, you know, not because you did a bad job, but for some other reason. You got to think about it and talk about it, let it sit, you know, type of a thing. And then you can write about it.
Yeah.
And that's okay.
Okay.
So it's not like this article or the chapter for reading for today made it seem like the conversion process from a thesis or dissertation into an article is this hideous process, and it's not. And part of the reason is because we really want you to publish, and so we're going to set you up to be able to publish right away. So it takes a lot more work, I think, to write a thesis or a dissertation or a project in article format up front, because you're getting all of this. So I'll give you an example with my dissertation. When I sent Marika drafts of my manuscripts, she was reading it as if she were a reviewer for a journal. She gave me that level of critique on my dissertation. And I was stressed like no other. She was being crazy. But what that meant was when I finished my defense, I had 3 articles ready to submit. I did no work after my defense. All I did was take them out and reformat them for the 3 journals that I submitted to, and then just sent them literally the week after.
So what is your other part of your dissertation for? If you can only submit the 3 articles, like it's just condensed. That's what it is. Like,
yeah, I mean, the university has requirements. And so, and the purpose of a thesis or a dissertation is to make you knowledgeable, like the expert in your area, right? And so you have to demonstrate to us as your committee that you have that level of knowledge and expertise. And so I need to know that you have read everything there is to read about this, which means I need you to write about it in your proposal in your final document. You can't publish that though, because journals give you limitations. And so that's why this will be so long, but what you publish is not. Plus you get a cool book, right? You can be dang sure my parents got these for Christmas after I graduated, right?
how do you know you covered everything?
Your committee tells you.
How do they know? Like how do you find every like?
Well, you can never read everything.
Yeah.
You can never, I mean, mostly it comes through as we're reading theses and dissertations and even just articles, you know, in general, when there's holes or gaps in your logic. And we can see that a lot easier, I think, because we just have the practice of doing it. And so when things don't make sense or we start to ask you questions and you can't explain things, you need to do more reading. So some people get stuck in the I'm going to read forever and not start writing phase. And at some point, you just have to start writing. You just got to get something on paper. And so right now I've got 2 master's students working on their proposals, and they're like, I don't know. I'm reading and I just keep finding articles. I'm like, stop. Just start writing. You just have to get it on paper. And I can give you feedback on something on paper, but I can't give you feedback when we're just chit-chatting about the articles that you've read. And I'm not going to give you feedback on an evidence table because you're not synthesizing that. You're just like spitting out facts. Okay, fine. That looks good to me, but put it all together in a story and tell me a story. If you can't do that, then I can't give you that feedback. So sometimes people have a really hard time starting that writing, and Oftentimes the methods section is the easiest part to write because it's just, this is what I'm doing. So if you have an idea, a really good idea, and you've worked it out with your, I'm going to do this intervention and I'm going to do a yoga intervention for 6 weeks and we're going to do this and this and this. Okay, if you are having a hard time getting started on the intro or lit review, put all that on paper in a methods section. And that can sometimes stimulate the writing process, and then you can go back and start writing, assuming you've done the appropriate reading of the intro and lit review. You don't have to write in this linear fashion, starting at an intro all the way through to a conclusion. Usually you go back and around and around.
When do we start, like, finding a advisor? And, like, when do we do that? When we just, like, ask someone to be our advisor? And
Next semester.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
Once you go through research methods and you start to really cultivate that idea.
Okay.
Okay, so online crew, online master students, if you want a digital format of the thesis guide just so you can see how to format, your projects will be different if you're going to do a project. If you want to do a project like unto a thesis because you want to get it published or maybe go on to get a PhD, then you probably definitely want the thesis guide, and I can send you that. So just shoot me okay, there's 2. Comment in the chat and I'll send it to you after class.
Okay.
No, I'm not. Holly and Shannon, you guys are in the timing right now that you need it. No, you in-person people are all going to get this hard copy. No, we're not giving it to you ahead of time because you're going to freak out.
I will. I'll probably sit there and read it every
Anxious
day,
people.
What is it on my desk?
Okay. Oh yeah, Jake, you're in that timing too.
I'll take 2.
Mhm.
I have one.
Oh, I gave you one?
It was that day that I met with Marika, and you were like, "Do you have one of these?" I was like, "No." You're like, "Here." It's on my desk.
Oh. And I didn't give you one? Maybe it's because we hadn't really figured out who was going to be people. It's pretty clear who's your advisor is going to be. So you have to get I think that was established from the get-go type of a thing. Yeah, so whoever your advisor is will give it to you. And so, yeah. Okay, so that's converting into a thesis or a thesis or dissertation into an article. It doesn't have to be a hideous process, and we don't convert. We just start from the beginning. Okay.
Which advisor are we going to get that from?
So online masters people, I'll just send it to you because I don't know.
It'd be you or Brent, because Brent's
I don't know if Brent has a copy of the digital version, but I do because I wrote this thing, so I'll just send it to you guys.
Sure.
But generally, your advisor will give you your thesis guide type of thing. So,
cool.
Can somebody actually just shoot me an email, one of you online people who want it, to just one person? I don't need 100 emails.
I'll get on it.
I see it here in the chat, and it's great, and I'm going to remember it now, and then as soon as I close out class, I'm going to forget. Okay, so we're talking about writing, right? So it's not this linear process. You go back and forth between your sections. Eventually, you'll get it all in there. And your advisor, your co-authors will help you refine it all into a good product, right? Make sure there's no holes, no gaps in the logic, that it has a good flow. It's not this choppy, crappy thing, and you're skipping back and forth between topics and ideas. No, we don't want any of that. It takes practice to learn how to write with a scholarly voice, and probably the best thing to do to help you develop that voice is to read articles. I know that that's not like the most favorite activity, right? That's what you guys do on Friday nights in grad school. Yes. You read articles if you're in grad school. Actually, when I was on the plane coming back from Thailand, there was a girl in my row, but it was like 3 seats, 4 seats, 3 seats. She was in that 3-seat side. Had this big stack of articles, and I was like, good for you. On our 13-hour flight, let's see how long you keep reading through those. And she plowed through a big chunk of that. I was impressed. Yeah, you just got to read, and that's how you cultivate that voice.
So when you're talking about a scholarly voice, are you talking about verbiage or because I feel like that can be hard, because if you're thinking about who your readers are, and they are practitioners, we're trained and polished to do this kind of writing.
You don't want to write super technical and like some statsy stuff and all that. You don't want that for practitioners because they're just going to like gloss over, right? And they don't really care. They want to know the application to practice. You have to put that into journal articles to some degree because that's the format of a journal scholarly article. But if you're writing to practitioners, it doesn't have to be like overly technical. And I would say that some journals will come back and say, we need you to not use such technical jargon. It's not dumbing down. It's not maybe it's simplifying, but it's not dumbing down. It's just using a different style to convey the same information. Something that goes in TRJ or leisure sciences cannot be simplified. They want all that detail and technical jargon and all that statsy talk. They want it. And so if that's not your strong suit, this is where you get a co-author who that is their strong suit, and they can explain all those details of your analysis that you don't know what that is, but I'll just let you explain it, type of a thing. And that's okay.
When you say, like when we looked at TRJ and it didn't really say who their audience is, like how do you know?
Mostly you know because, so you have to have you have to be a member of ATRA to get AJRT? Yeah. So already that tells you who your readership is as practitioners, because that's who the members of ACTRA are. But TRJ doesn't require membership in ATRA, but how do you know? I think just like the history of it. If you go back and look and talking to practitioners who's reading TRJ and none of them are saying me, then we know who it's going to is people who have more than likely a university access to a library subscription to the journal. Yeah. Generally, though, journals tell you who their target audience is. Is that target audience actually reading it? I don't know, but I have to go with what they're telling me who's reading it. Okay, so writing style. So we do have to communicate with precision. So we can't get super blah, 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 right? You don't have, even though in a dissertation you have this much space, there is no page limit on thesis, there is no page limit on a dissertation, but there are page limits in articles, okay? So you have to be concise, precise. Don't waste words. If it takes one word to say, or don't use 10 words to say what you could say in one, right? Just get to the point. When I was in grad school, me and my fellow doc students, we came up with these 2 categories that we liked to categorize all research articles in, that like we were reading for class, sitting in the grad lab type of a thing. So we came up with people are either incompetent boobs or pompous asses. And so we would read through like all of these articles, and some people were just like, maybe not all articles, but the ones that we didn't like, we put into these 2 categories. And it was, and you guys will probably all have read articles like this. The pompous ass is somebody who's really smart and likes to shove it in your face. And so they use a ton of big words and they really try to like kill you with all this, their knowledge type of a thing. Okay, pompous ass, right? Incompetent boobs are people who, we call it word salad. It's just like blah, blah, blah. It doesn't make sense. Maybe it's fluff or whatever. It's just such complicated writing that you can't even follow what it is. Like they kind of know what they're talking about, but they're not presenting it very well. Incompetent boob. Which one do you want to be? Neither, really. I wouldn't say either one is really good, but I guess maybe I'd rather be a pompous ass because at least I'm getting it right. Or an incompetent boob, like somebody's going to read this and be like, you're an idiot, you know? Right? And so maybe you aren't an idiot, you just didn't communicate it well. Okay, so I hope none of my articles fall into either of those 2 categories. Grad students are ruthless, right? When you're reading through like hundreds of articles a month, yeah, it's not enjoyable when you come across the not well-written ones. Okay, so yeah, word salad is my favorite little phrase to describe people who just like to put a ton of information into something that doesn't need that much explanation. Keep it simple. Okay, person first language. The chapter talked about that. APA, the APA manual actually has a statement in there about person first language. I think that this is common sense, right? We don't say, okay, if you read through some of the old articles in TRJ, they use retarded, mentally retarded, as just like we'll throw it around like it's nothing. We don't do that anymore. We don't do that in practice, and we don't do that in our research, in our writing. And as advisors, we will totally call you out if your language is not appropriate either. Okay, active voice versus passive voice. What's kind of the difference there?
There's some voice keeps the reader more engaged. It's basically passive voice is boring.
Yeah, so active is more engaged, passive is boring. That's a good way to put it. More direct. It's usually shorter. Yeah.
Active is it's you're the one doing it, and that comes first. So the subject is clear.
Yeah, it changes the focus in the sentence. Most of the time we want to write an active voice, but there are a few instances where passive voice is okay, and it gave some examples of that. But I don't know, again, as advisors, we read so much in terms of student work that we can catch that generally pretty quickly. And so we'll point it out, you need to change this. Now, when you're working on a proposal versus a final document, everything in your proposal goes in future tense. I'm going to do, in terms of the methods, I'm going to do this, I'm going to sample this population, I'm going to this, and this. It's all future. I haven't done it yet. This is what I propose to do. And then as soon as you pass that proposal and you're collecting your data and you start to convert that into an article and a final thesis or a final dissertation, now it's all past tense. I did this, I collected this, I analyzed it like this. The results were type of a thing. So what you read in a final article that gets published is all that past tense, this is what I did. I feel like somebody unmuted themselves to say something. Nope, okay. So that past tense versus future tense. Okay, I'm gonna show you guys a cool little thing. Have you ever, all of you commented about the fog index, which I thought was interesting. Did you know that you can do that in Word? You can find out what the, I'm just gonna open up a document really quick. Should I open up one of my articles that I've had published? Yeah, let's see what my writing level is. Ooh, da, da, da. I don't really know.
Was that on an incompetent boob to pompous ass scale?
It might be. All right. Okay, let me share document. This is the article I was telling you about that got accepted, or no, got rejected, and then rejected again, and then accepted, and the journal imploded, and then ended up in Leisure Sciences. So if you come up to Word, this is what it looks like in a Mac, and you, oh no, sorry, I lied. If you go to Review, where you have like your spell check type of a thing, so this is after you've written everything. You have to have words on a page to do this. Do your spell check. It's going through. I'm going to ignore everything. Okay, is it really going to go through my whole document and pick up last names and freak out about them? Apparently. Sorry, I didn't know I was going to check all this stuff.
A quick question while you're going through that. For the header, are you actually supposed to put the words running head?
Yep. That's
you are? Oh, okay. Okay, I couldn't tell by looking at Purdue OWL if it's just saying like your running head is your title, or if you have to put the words running head.
Yes, you do.
Okay.
Shorten your title
Yes.
in the header.
Yes. We can look at that. Okay, so I did my spell check. This is actually after telling it to spell check. And it goes through, counts my words and paragraphs and sentences. If you come down here to readability, it's telling me that my Flesch-Kincaid grade level reading is a 16.4. So that's like a college senior level reading. Is what that is. So somebody made the comment that in the article, in the chapter, it said that it's, most society is at like a 7th grade reading level.
That's what Seminar told us like 2 weeks ago too.
Yeah. So average people on the street are, this might be way over their head. But I didn't write this for average people on the street, so that's okay.
You didn't?
Nope. But hey, how about this? Let's open up one that I wrote for practitioners and see. Uh-oh, I stopped sharing. As long as I don't cancel class all of a sudden or kick everybody out. Okay, here's one. I'm a second author on this one. Or I might be like third or fourth author on this one. Okay, so here's one that just came out in AJRT. Whoop. Review. Oh, look at all these typos in there. Well, this was before we submitted it. I don't understand why it's taking so long to spell check.
That's good to know.
The spinning pinwheel of death.
It's supposed to be the
You
same
said
campus in
Florida.
America, though, right? We're fine.
That's why they like translate that you're doing.
Every school claims that they're the same. Like Western said they were the
They
same.
got sustainability, like the best sustainability.
Okay.
Really?
All right, guys. Okay, so an article written for AJRT is at a 15.5 level, so junior level in college. I think that's okay because this is assuming going to practitioners, all those practitioners have at least a college degree. They should be able to read this, and that's okay.
What is the one above it?
The flesh reading ease, yeah, I don't know what that number means. I just look at the grade level.
If you're wanting to, produce research that you think the general public should be reading, where would that go?
Not into scholarly journals.
Are there other journals that people can read? Like,
So no, it'd go in magazines. So this would be like Parks and Recreation magazine, which is an NRPA Sagamore kind of owned thing.
okay.
But it would be something that like your local Parks and Rec department, the people who work there probably have a subscription to this, like the office has a subscription to the magazine, but it's not scholarly, it's a magazine.
Okay.
And so your article would be like 3 pages long.
Okay.
In the magazine, it would be 3 pages. On a Word document, it's probably like 8.
Way dumbed down, like it couldn't be the readability.
Yeah, I wouldn't call it dumbed down, but yeah, readability level would not be at a 15 or 16 grade level, right? It would be like 7th or 8th grade level if you want just off the street people to be able to read it. But if you want other researchers to read your stuff, it shouldn't be at that level because it will come across as incompetent boob, right? Why is this written like this? Like sometimes I read stuff that I'm like, oh my gosh, they're trying to get this published. This is like a first draft, but that's their final thing that they submitted. Either they're a horrible writer or they just really didn't care and just submitted their first draft. And that would be bad too.
Because the 7th grade thing was originally my thought, because I was thinking about the presentation we got in seminar, but now I'm like, okay, well, that doesn't really make sense anymore. But I guess it just depends.
Depends on who you're writing to.
Yeah. And like what your intentions are as a researcher.
Yeah. TRJ should not be written at a 7th grade level. Leisure sciences, no way. I mean, that first one that I pulled up that was the 16.4, that went to leisure sciences in that format. That was exactly what I submitted.
So as an author, how do you find a journal?
Well, part of it is because you read all this stuff, so you know that you should know the journals that are applicable to your field. So it's not just, like I said, I don't just publish in rec therapy journals because, well, we only have 2.
Yeah.
But rec therapy is only a piece of what I do. I work with veterans, I work with families, and I work with broadly people with disabilities. And so that can be covered in, 30,000 different journals. So I publish in military journals, I publish in family journals, I publish in disability specific journals. So autism and developmental disabilities. I've published in family relations and the Journal of Family Theory and Review, because all of that is very specific to family. They don't have anything in there about leisure. Woo! Exactly where I want to publish, right? If I want to get my stuff out to people who've never heard about family leisure and I'm a family leisure researcher, I'll go to a family journal. because I know how to speak their language, but I'll teach them something new. That's how we like expand beyond our borders of our profession, right? So you know about journals based on the more you read, the more you'll learn about what journals are out there.
So just like with OT journals and PT journals, do we ever get articles published in those?
Mm-hmm. It's weird. So I think that we have to be careful about how we present recreation therapy when we publish specifically in OT and PT journals. More so in OT because there's that we have more overlap with OT than we do with PT, right? And so, and I personally, in my interactions with people, I've had more like heated interactions with OTs than I have with PTs. And so they don't like us as much as, I mean, PTs, I think we're different enough that they're like, whatever. But OTs are like, no, this is what I do. And we're like, no, this is what I do. You know, we're like, you know, like bumping chest type of thing. Okay, so Marika has published in OT journals, and that's because her best friend publishing partner is an OT. They were classmates together in their PhDs, and they do almost all their publishing together. So they have like 40,000 different articles. Arlene Schmidt, she's an OT, and they publish in OT stuff. So Arlene would probably take the lead in those journals because she's the OT. And I would imagine that people would see CTRS after Marika's name and be like, why is a rec therapist trying to publish in an OT journal? You know? So I think there's like a fine line with publishing. You can always publish outside your field as long as you are knowledgeable about the topic that you're publishing in and you present it in an appropriate manner.
We publish a lot together. Do you think that, so like, you know how the core imbalance, when someone saw you pairing with that person, they were like, ooh, you know, do you think that OTs, when they see her pair with a CTRS, they're like, ooh, I don't want to deal with her. I don't want to work with her.
No, because they do good research.
Okay. They do really good research.
Yeah, I mean, people develop strong opinions about researchers, and it might be based only on what they read, their actual research that they're reading, but it also might be based on personal interactions with those people. And so some people have met Raymond and they don't like Raymond, and then they get an article that clearly has Raymond's influence on it, and they're like, rah, about it. And that's just dumb. That's petty, you know. But if you do good research, then it shouldn't really matter. It shouldn't matter. But this is why you have more than one review too. And I have gotten feedback from my 2 reviewers, one where they said, this is fabulous, publish, and the other one said, this is garbage, why did you even submit? Well, what am I supposed to do with that information? How do I know which changes to make? I mean, I'm going to go with the fabulous publish, you know, if you're going to have to make me choose. But this is where an associate editor will bring those 2 reviews together and say, this is what we suggest. Rarely is it a one person says publish, the other person says reject, and that the AE would go with the reject. Usually they'll say accept with major if it really is a major issue. Because we'd rather publish something if it's good and can be good than just reject everything, because then you have nothing to publish. So that was a tangent, but yeah. No, they do publish a lot together, and that's very strategic of them. They consider themselves a working group. I have a working group with 3 or 4 people in it, and we have lots of articles together. So Brent is part of that. Brent and I publish a lot together. It's strategic. Given the number that you have to produce in order to get tenure, it's strategic to find people that you can publish with.
Well, it makes you play nice with people.
It does. It makes you play nice. That is a good point. Okay, so writing style, no fluff. Check out your readability. Don't come across as a pompous ass, unless that's what you want. And you're writing to other pompous asses. Go right ahead. Do not introduce bias by using words like extremely or unfortunately. So let's say your results don't pan out and you say, unfortunately, things didn't move. Well, now you've biased it. People are like, oh, sad, it didn't work out. And you pointed it out to me and you're sad about it. And I see. And so, one time that's not a big deal, but throughout an entire manuscript, enough of those one-off words with emotion attached to it can really skew a a paper, bias a paper. So leave that out. And it's just, you don't need the emotion. You don't need the drama. Findings were extremely important, or they were, very promising. No, the findings were promising. The findings are important, whatever. We don't need that extra on it. Okay, first person writing. Do we say, I did this, I recruited people for this, I collected the data like this, I gave them these surveys?
Oh, you're supposed to write in third person, right?
Yeah. It's weird. There have been a few instances where I've come across articles where they write in the first person, and it as soon as I read it, I'm like, whoa.
Can we expand on that though? Because on it said that first person active voice is okay at some point when you're emphasizing your own action.
Did it give an example?
Maybe I just wrote down that bullet point.
Generally, you'll never see the word I or even we in a research article. You say the research team, the researchers did this, the principal investigator. You might be the principal investigator, but you don't ever say I.
Okay.
The only time that I can imagine it is in qualitative work where you generally recognize your influence on the study because qualitative is totally different than quantitative work. So when you are like a fly on the wall observing participants and you're going to write about that, your presence there influences their interactions and their experiences, right? And so you have to acknowledge that. And so sometimes in qualitative work, you'll have somebody talk about in the first person about their presence in a study.
So what would one sentence of that sound like?
Actually, I have an example from Dr.
Would they still, even though it's qualitative, would they still write in the first person, or would they say, like a limitation or something could be the fact, like the researcher's presence in the room could have affected?
Nope, it's still in qualitative. It's really
it's just different.
Yeah.
Okay, because I'm doing quantitative, so I'm not, as familiar with like mostly qualitative work, but that's because it takes a lot more effort. So I'm doing quantitative.
Yeah, hang on one second. I have a little, dang it, I don't have the dissertation guide. Let me open up the dissertation guide.
You ever write in first person in your thesis or dissertation?
Nope.
Like even in your personal
Only
reflection?
in chapter, that end
That
chapter,
last
the
one where you-
conclusion, where you can like ruminate on things. Yeah. But nowhere else would you do it. Let me, except for qualitative work. Qualitative is so different. Yes. Is anybody doing a qualitative anything? Oh, you guys are too early to know. Okay, so I'm going to read you something. This is in the methods section from Steve's dissertation, Dr. Lewis's dissertation. And this is how he wrote his intro paragraph. As previously mentioned, I selected a critical qualitative narrative approach to this dissertation. Within this section, I presented the rationale of following the narrative turn in order to provide research participants with a potential platform of empowerment and mapped out the specific methods planned for this project, concluding with the projected outputs from this research. He referred to himself twice in 2 sentences, basically. You would never do that in a quantitative study, in a quantitative article, but in a qualitative one it fits, and especially with his particular method where he was very much embedded in producing the output. I don't know, you have to read his whole thing to understand it, but
What was it? You don't know. Like, what was his thing?
He interviewed transgender people about their experience in their leisure spaces or something like that, and he watched video blogs of people who've talked about their experiences and put it out there online. So he gathered all of these blogs because they were out there and free on YouTube. And then he contacted these people and asked if he could do interviews with them and stuff like that. Yeah. And so what if you're doing mixed methods, more than likely you're not going to put the reference to yourself in there. And I don't know that you would do it in every qualitative, but it has to fit. But you'll see it more in a qualitative.
I feel like when you write in first person, it gives it more of a subjective tone too. It's not like the scientific, like trying to be objective, kind of like that technical writing thing. So I feel like that's why I feel so uncomfortable when I read it. I'm like, is this going to be like biased because it's saying I, even though it's like the same thing, one person or three people, whatever, are writing it.
It's
weird.
Totally different.
Yeah.
Let me read a little bit more about how he wrote his analysis up. Checked transcripts were analyzed to understand how participants express and experience identity within their narratives. In my original proposal, I suggested the use of logic statement analysis, but then felt that this other model would be more appropriate because I had more experience with this method. However, as I started interviewing participants, I realized that all narratives would not necessarily work for critical event analysis, and it was not the best way to do this. So in my previous use of, I, me, talking about how his thought process changed while he was doing this. And so that's just not the typical way to do it. It's okay for what he did, and that his committee wanted that. And I don't know what it turned into an article, but this was what was in his dissertation. So very different, but not standard, not typical.
Just even using the language best. It's the best way to do that. I have a question, like why? What makes it?
You'd have to talk to him about why that was the best way to present it. I mean, it's all negotiable. In terms of how you present things in your thesis and dissertation, it's really, there is a standard way, but to some degree it's negotiable with your committee chair. Really. Okay. In our last 15 minutes, let's talk about poster presentations. Has anybody ever done a poster at a conference?
Did you guys do posters? Did they get rid of that? We didn't have to do it on poster.
Shannon's saying she did it for class, and she's a Western person, right? So this is a class thing. Okay, so this is basically, you guys have been in seminars, so you know the 20-minute standard format. It's basically the same thing, just in a poster, and there's no time attached to how long somebody could stand in front of your poster. Poster sessions are usually a couple of hours during a conference, and people might go and get food and mingle through the posters type of a thing, which is great for people who are super nervous about doing a presentation. You don't want a formal presentation, but I'll stand next to my poster and really hope that nobody asks me questions, right? So I think posters are great for getting like your feet wet in the presentation world. My very first accepted conference abstract was for a poster. And so it was nice to just kind of go, and I bought my first suit. I was way overdressed for a poster presentation, right? But dressed the part. And so I stood next to my poster, and nobody asked me any questions. But this was when I was a master's student. Marika came by, and she knew I was interested in grad school, and so she asked me questions intentionally.
But you gotta take a picture of it.
Exactly. I stood next to that. I took that picture. I sent it to my mom. She was so proud.
I still have one.
Mm-hmm.
With the timing of that, I mean, generally we would probably
Mm-hmm.
you would know our stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, do people go and still do it afterwards? Because like if there's a summit
Mm-hmm.
their deadline for posters.
Yeah.
Obviously.
Don't
And
have
it's
anything.
for the summer, like it's for July.
Yeah.
So like, do people still, if they really have
Oh, absolutely. And you, as practitioners, you can present at conferences. If you are doing some cool research in your facility, but you don't want to do like a formal presentation, but you'll do a poster about it, you can submit that and stand next to that. Yeah. And that
It doesn't, I was going to say, when I was a teacher assistant in my undergrad, and I was a co-presenter at our state conference. And it doesn't even have to be like research that you've conducted. Like we presented on adaptive and assistive technologies. And like, so our professor did like the main presentation, and then we did breakout groups. So I only had like 50 people in my group, and I was demonstrating the Sip and Puff. Has anybody ever heard of that? It's a use for a computer. So for people who are pretty much only have, like if they have a upper spinal cord injury and only have like their breathing to pretty much like they're quadriplegic, And so they can use this device and use their breathing to navigate on a computer.
Oh, yeah.
So that was the device like that I spoke about, and I didn't know much about it until that year. So I had to like teach myself about it, but you can like easily do something like that. Like, and everybody was interested in it because they'd like never heard of it. So
yeah. Okay, so posters, the chapter said, usually they'll be 4 feet by 6 feet. Yeah, right. They're not that big. Okay.
That's huge.
I know. Can you help me? So generally when you submit a abstract for a poster, the conference will tell you what the sizes are. This is probably one of the smaller posters I've ever done. And I would say this is like, what, 3 feet by 4 feet, or I don't know, 3 feet by 4 feet, maybe something like that. But they'll give you the inches on it. And so, but it has all the same information as what you would do in a presentation: intro, lit review, methods, discussion, implications, type of a thing. And really it's supposed to be, you know, when did I make this? Way back in the early days of my PhD. Looking back at it now, I would say this is probably too wordy, you know. It should be more visual than wordy. People are going to come by and just stand there and read it, which is great, but if they get so much information off of the reading, they're not going to ask you any questions. And maybe you're okay with that, and that's fine. But really, I would, if I'm going to go stand next to a poster, I would rather talk to somebody about it. And so I would put less words and force people to ask me questions. Okay, so I haven't done posters since I was a student, just because as a faculty member, we don't really do posters. But here's another one. This one is, this was based off of my thesis, so it's a lot bigger. Well, not just because it was my thesis, it just is bigger. The conference that I presented at gave us bigger dimension. You know, and this really, sometimes they'll provide you easels and stuff, and so if the easel is only this big, and you've got half your poster hanging off, that kind of sucks, right? So you really have to keep it within the boundaries they give you. And again, probably too wordy. Now, going back, having more experience presenting, I'll talk about my research until the cows come home. So I don't need all that words on there. I'll talk about it. I'll just put pictures and more bullet points. Posters are fun, though. A good way to get your feedback.
Like, you're no longer affiliated with university defining, don't have that part of it.
What do you mean?
Like, if I wanted to do this, if I wanted to go to this summit, not this summer, but the following summer, and I technically would be.
Well, if it's research that you did here,
you would put that.
You would put it out there. Yeah.
Okay.
If I was a co-author on that with you, you'd put that on there. Okay. Plus, it's really fun to take a tube on an airplane. You look very like studious and important and whatever. Okay.
They get one, just carry an empty tube.
Yeah.
Excuse me, a very good information.
So it can be expensive to print a poster. We have, as students, you may have access to printers on campus that are a lot cheaper. Karen here in the department will print a poster for you, and I think it's either free or really cheap. There is a website called posterpresentations.com, and I looked it up, and 4 foot by, oh, I did the math. Now I can't remember. Yeah, 4 foot by 6 foot poster would cost $90 to print out. Yeah.
There's another thing if you're asking why we don't do it or why practitioners
Exactly.
don't do it.
Why practitioners don't do it if you had to pay that out of pocket. But maybe that's something your facility would pay. If they support you doing the research, maybe they would support the process of getting the results out there too. So you could ask for them to cover the cost of that.
Staples is cheaper.
Probably.
Like,
Probably.
I don't think it could be that.
Or what?
The pictures are always printed now. It's not like glue and scissors anymore.
Nope, it's not like, it's not 3rd grade poster. No.
Trifold board.
No. Okay, so at ATRA or NRPA or those kind of conferences, it is not trifold posters, not at all.
Like, I was reading that trifold. I didn't realize how old our reading was until I started talking about like projector slides, and I was like, okay, so trifold's probably not out of date.
No, but if you go to this posterpresentations.com, they have the trifold option on there. But maybe, I don't know, not for scholarly, not for conferences. No. Good point. Good point.
That's the first thing I thought of. Interesting. I was like,
No, this is what I'm talking about. We have posters all around the walls in here. You guys can check them out. Okay, so last little section, the oral presentations. And again, if you've been in any type of a seminar class, whether it's here or at somewhere else, then you've seen what a standard research presentation looks like. 20 minutes, maybe 10 to 15 minutes of questions afterwards, depending on where you're presenting, who you're presenting with. If you're in a thesis proposal or defense, or a dissertation proposal or defense, it's 20 minutes of presentation and then endless questions until your committee says you're done. And so that could be an hour of questions, it could be 5 minutes of questions, but it's questions to gauge understanding and knowledge and clarification and things like that. So it just goes until it's done. Same thing, intro, review, methods, results, discussion, but in only 20 minutes. So you have to be very concise. PowerPoint presentations or Prezis or whatever, bullets are better than lots of writing type of text. You just want the bullets with a few words or lots of pictures. Prezis don't really do bullets. Have you guys seen Prezis before? Yeah, they're super cool. And people who do good Prezis, I love those presentations.
Yeah, those I had to do that for, I don't know, one of the previous classes is before I downloaded PowerPoint, so I couldn't do PowerPoint, so it's like I had to do a Prezi. And they're so much fun. Like, I feel like they're just more aesthetically pleasing and engaging.
Yeah. And there's no, I mean, I'll tell you, for your thesis or dissertation proposals or defenses, there's no rule that says you have to do PowerPoint. I did a Prezi for my dissertation proposal, and it took a crap ton of work to put that thing together. But then when I was doing my defense, it was so complicated I couldn't figure out how to make it work in a Prezi. I needed to follow this logical, like, linear process to step by step to get through that much research in 20 minutes, and a Prezi was not a linear presentation fashion, and so it didn't work. But Prezis are very fun and all about it. So this is the same for a poster as it is for a presentation, but you establish an outline or the flow in your document, whether it's your proposal or an abstract that you submit to a conference, and that's the same flow that you should follow in your presentation. And nothing should really deviate too wildly in a presentation from what you would put in the document. And so you'll get caught up in a thesis or a dissertation proposal or a defense if there's something that comes through the presentation that is not in the document. And we read those documents, we really do. And so if all of a sudden there's a new method or a new instrument or a new whatever and it's not in your document, you're going to get caught on that, and we'll ask you in that question period afterwards. So use your document as your guide. Some things to not get hung up on: too many words, not enough visuals. So my posters are a good example of too many words. You could have, on the flip side, very complicated visuals with no explanations. So if you're doing something super statsy and you've got a diagram up there with all these arrows all over the place and you put no explanation with it and you just like throw it up there and let people stare at it, but you don't talk about it, that's not good either. Always practice your presentations, whether this is something for seminar or something for thesis or dissertation proposal, defense, or an actual conference presentation. Practice. It's different. It's just a whole different beast. And some people, when I get nervous, I talk faster and faster and faster. You got 20 minutes and I get through it in 5. You know, I just did like Micro Machine Man talking, right? You guys know what I'm talking about, Micro Machines? Some of you do. That makes me feel a little bit better.
Yes, definitely know Micro Machines.
Yeah. So it's a guy in a commercial who talks really fast. Yeah. But you don't want to spend only 5 minutes on your presentation when you have 20. On the flip side, I have seen people go way the heck past their 20 minutes, and they will cut you off in a presentation, in a conference. They will just end it wherever you are and not give you any question and answer period. And then that pisses people off, like moderators, and they don't like you. So don't go over either. So just practice. If you need to use little note cards, that's okay too. But I've also seen this. Don't read like this from your abstract. I saw somebody read their whole 3-page abstract, and they had slides queued up for the different sections, and they had somebody hitting their slides for them as they not once looked up at the audience. They just read through like this, and then, you know, flipped their page and just kept on reading through. And I was like, oh my gosh, it was only 20 minutes. Well, only 20 minutes. It felt a lot longer than that, but I mean, I couldn't tell you anything about that study. So you can have notes, and if you're really like gonna throw up, you can read, but take a breath, look up, and engage your audience. We're here to kind of have a presentation, but a dialogue to some degree. Like, don't just read. Don't read. Okay, and then use the same graphs and stuff that you put in your document and tables, put all that in your presentation. So you want to have nice, pretty things, and so in your document, so you can use that in your presentation. I think that's it. Let's get our stuff out there, right? We don't just do this work, our research, for it to just kind of live in nowhere land, or we shouldn't. But there are challenges, obviously, as practitioners to getting some stuff out in terms of resources and knowledge, but that's what you're in a grad program for right now, and hopefully you'll learn how to do all that stuff so that when you go out and practice, you can do that and not have those challenges. So everybody's gonna publish something, right? Yeah. And everybody's gonna present something, right? Well, at least for all of you in-person students, you have to, because that's part of the benchmarks for being in the program. I think you guys all just freaked out.
But not till second year.
You have to do it before you graduate.
But also like doing stuff at ATRA and doing stuff at
ATRA totally counts. Local conferences count.
Yeah.
All of that counts. And so, you know, if you're scared about,
Oh, we can do it at a conference instead of
Seminar?
yeah,
Oh, I would way rather do that.
yeah, I already
Yeah.
presented at NCTRA once.
if you're nervous about doing something at an ATRA, because that's more on the national stage type of a thing, you can do your local conference. So where, I'm just trying to think of where everybody's from. North Carolina has a good conference. Chicago has,
South Carolina have one?
nope, we don't have a regional conference.
You don't?
North Carolina has 2 in here. They have this big.
RTI or
Well, there's SRTS, and that's like the Southeast region. So that gets like Alabama, Florida, Georgia,
There's not many states that
North and South Carolina. Yeah.
So,
Midwest.
when I was on
RTIs, Rec Therapists of Indiana. So look up your local organizations because they are good places to present posters and presentations.
So I can do
JEV, exactly.
And I'm gonna tell them.
Yeah, and I will throw this out there. And this is something that we're trying to communicate with the profession, and I'll end it on this, is that we, and maybe this is just something that we at Clemson kind of feel, and I don't know, but we feel like if we are going to help the profession learn how to do research and get that research out there, that we as the faculty here should be open to, maybe this is just my own opinion. I'll just say that, maybe this is my opinion, but I've heard other people say it. We're open to partnering with organizations. If you have research and you don't know how to make it, you know, happen to get it out there in a presentation or a publication, and you want to get some help on that, you can call us and say, I've got this data, I don't know what to do with it. And I'd be willing to help get that out there. If that means writing something up with you or helping you present, I would totally do that. So you don't have to be like, oh, well, I don't know how to do this, I'm never going to do it. You guys are all in a master's program, so you're learning how to do it, but that means you have the skill. So you go back to your, you know, facilities and organizations and say, hey, I can do this now. Let's do something together. Or maybe partner with another local organization, a similar one, and come together and collaborate on something and then get it out there. So don't feel like you have to do this all alone on your own, because you don't. And I will leave it at that. Have a good night. See you all next week. Lit reviews, annotated bibliographies after that. Go team. Woo!